Welcome back to the next episode of the Fullcourt Report. I'm your, I guess you could call it your part-time host, Chris Tobias, aka Toby, and I'm joined by Justin and Jorie Mickens. How are you boys doing today?
I'm doing great, fella.
We had an interesting week of NBA news and basketball this week. I guess we could just jump right into it. We don't got anything else to say, but I kind of wanted to start off not talking about these playoff games and some, side news that has been in the news recently. But on June 24th, in an interview with GQ, Scottie Pippen was asked to compare Kevin Durant's game against LeBron James's, and like who was the best player currently in the NBA. Scottie Pippen said, KD can score better than LeBron, probably always has been able to. But has he surpassed LeBron? No. He tried to beat the Milwaukee Bucks instead of utilizing his team. LeBron James would have figured out how to beat them, and he wouldn't have been exhausted. And he may not have taken the last shot, but LeBron ain't KD, and KD ain't LeBron. KD is a shooter, a scorer, but he doesn't have what LeBron has. And as we all know, KD is not afraid to clap back at anybody, including the fans, the media, and even former superstars. So KD responded on Twitter, as he usually does, and he said, didn't the great Scottie Pippen refuse to go in the game for the last second shot because he was in his feelings? His coach drew up a play for a better shooter. He followed this up by saying, this guy Scott also drew up a play for a better this guy Scott wanted to enjoy his summer off, so he chose to rehab during the season. LOL, yo, Scottie Pippen, they followed Phil, not you. My question to you guys is, was KD out of pocket for his response to Scottie Pippen? Whose side do you agree with more? And ultimately, what do you guys make of these comments by both sides?
I don't think Kevin Durant was out of pocket at all. In fact, I think both sides may have been disrespectful, but both sides were speaking facts. Scottie Pippen was completely right about the comparison. LeBron has things that Kevin Durant doesn't. Kevin Durant has things that LeBron doesn't. But Scottie Pippen, he's been known to be a hater against current players. But Scottie Pippen, at least to me, that guy is a hater. He hates on current players all the time, and he hates on how the game is played today. Years ago, even, as a matter of fact, years ago, he tried to say LeBron still isn't better than him because he doesn't have as many rings. Literally the only reason he said LeBron isn't as good as him, which that's false. But he also he basically said Kevin Durant isn't a team player, which one isn't true. In a game I'm pretty sure it was without Kyrie and Harden, Kevin Durant almost put up a 50-point triple-double. I don't know how that's being a non-team player. But Kevin Durant also didn't even have a team to play with. He had Kyrie, who was out, and Harden, who was playing on a non-existent hamstring.
I agree with that. Jorie, what do you have to say?
I feel like this is another incident of Kevin Durant being overly sensitive. This has continued to happen throughout his entire career. I don't know. I mean, it's just like our friend Spencer said it the best, Justin. Like, who cares what other people are saying? Like, I feel like, do you guys remember that one, I guess, press conference or one interview Kevin Durant did where he basically was just like, you guys know who I am. I'm Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, I don't know how you can say that on one hand, and then on the other hand, always be like so riled up about what other players are saying about, or like what other former players are saying about you. Like, how can you say you don't care about what people think about you, and then this continues to happen? Like, who cares? Like, if someone wants to believe you're not better than LeBron, then that's their opinion. Like, I don't know. It doesn't take away from his greatness, I don't think. And I don't know. What he said was kind of facts. Like, he's a scorer, he's a shooter. And he doesn't make his teammates better, at least at the rate that LeBron does. And again, I don't think that should be even like a discredit towards Kevin Durant, because literally LeBron might do that better than anyone in NBA history. So like, is what he's saying like that disrespectful? I don't know. Not really, but like
I kind of I take KD's side on this, I think.
Oh, really?
And
you take KD's side?
Well, I will admit, like, I don't think he should have, like, it's like petty to even respond the way that he did. But it's Kevin Durant. Like, this is what he does. This is what he's going to continue to do. And he's always going to he's always going to match your energy. You know what I mean? Like, Scottie Pippen kept it basketball. So KD responded basketball wise. Like, look at yourself in the mirror. Like, you did this. You weren't always a team player either. And I also think it's like unfair criticism to say that like KD should have won it, even though like the other stars got injured, or like KD needs help to win a championship or something like that. Personally, I think if LeBron was with the same roster, I don't think he would have gotten the job done either. But I don't know. Like, I kind of, it's petty, but like, I agree with you.
You're probably right, because we look at, I mean, I think we're going to talk about, the conference finals a little bit later, but like we look at the Lakers, or we look at the Suns and we say, oh, they got so lucky because LeBron didn't have AD. But when it's Kevin Durant against the Bucks, nobody wants to give him any kind of, flack for losing Kyrie and James Harden. I don't know. It is kind of weird.
It's both. But there's always going to be haters. So it's like both ways with KD, with LeBron. Like, it's unfair to say LeBron can't win without any help when he was with the Cavs, and, Kyrie got injured and Kevin Love got injured and all those crazy seasons. And that I didn't include it in the rundown, but Scottie Pippen later tweeted and he was like, LeBron won a ring without any help. And that was literally the tweet. And like, I really highly disagree with that take, but yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I kind of just dismiss all of these like little beefs, because it's always just goes away within a few days and then another one pops up. It's always so pointless to me.
It's petty. It doesn't really matter, but it's just some things that you can take away from it. But I guess we can move on to our next topic. Kind of not moving away from the drama and the beefs and stuff. But recently, this past Friday on the 25th, the Dallas Mavericks had made the choice to hire former NBA superstar and NBA assistant coach Jason Kidd as their new head coach. Along with this, they have also hired Nico Harrison as their new GM. And Jason Kidd had previously been a head coach for the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks, making the playoffs 3 times with a total win-loss record of 183 and 190. He also recently won a championship with the Lakers as an assistant coach. So the decisions have brought a lot of mixed emotions, and, some criticisms. Some people like it. But do you guys support these moves made by the Mavericks, and how do you think it will help them / Luka Doncic get to the pinnacle, which is a championship?
I don't really have a lot to say, so I'll just get it out of the way really quickly. I'm not sure how to feel, because in my opinion, Kidd was looking like a clown while he was coaching Brooklyn and Milwaukee. But LeBron was really adamant on having him on board with the coaching staff on the Lakers. So Jason Kidd, he might be a clown, but he might be a basketball. Come up with that nice little play to get a free timeout.
Yeah, that was a legendary play right there. That'll never be forgotten.
I mean, I kind of agree with Justin. Like, I feel like with Jason Kidd in particular, like, he was the head coach of the Nets and the Bucks, obviously. I don't know. It's just like, he didn't do anything incredible in either of those situations. And then, like I mentioned in our group chat, like the year after he left, or the year they got a new coach, Mike Budenholzer, they became the best team in the NBA. Giannis was the MVP. Like, I feel like he was just limiting what their, ceiling was. And I feel like what the Mavericks need is a coach who can, get the best out of all of their players, in particular Luka Doncic. I don't know if he's necessarily the person to do that. Like, I feel like there's just some coaches in the NBA world that are specialty coaches and they're just meant to be assistants. And I feel like that's for Jason Kidd. I feel like he's had his turn as a head coach and it didn't work out. And for him to get another chance, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens, but I don't think he's going to do any better than Rick Carlisle has done the past, 13 years or however long he was with the Mavericks. I don't know if he's really going to be I don't know if he's going to be there for very long, to be honest.
I think he's going to be good. I think this was a good choice for a head coach. And although I will admit he wasn't the best, especially in that first year in Brooklyn, but he sort of started to figure things out and figure himself out as a coach. And then in Milwaukee, based off of what I'd read, players were sort of thrown, or what's the word, I guess? Yeah, kind of like thrown off by his attitudes towards them. He highly criticized like Giannis, and to the media also. And that kind of made Giannis like not really motivated to play with him. So I think him winning a championship with the Lakers and seeing how Frank Vogel and that whole coaching staff kind of was able to elevate their team, I think hopefully he'll be able to take some of what he learned there and apply that to the Mavericks. And, him winning a championship with them in 2011, I also heard that he's thinking about getting JJ Barea as an assistant coach with them. So I just think culturally it's a good fit. I think I could be completely wrong, but I think he'll mesh well with Luka. Luka's kind of the player who will criticize himself, blame himself if his team loses, even if he has like a 30-point triple-double. That's just kind of the player he is. That's kind of the coach that Jason Kidd is. And there's, a lot of things that Luka can learn from Kidd as a player. So I think this will be good for them. It could go very wrong, obviously, but I guess we'll see as time goes.
I think, though, one thing before we move on, like that concerns me about Jason Kidd is I feel like he's had success with rosters that are older. Like the Brooklyn Nets team that he had his best like individual season with was definitely a more veteran team. They had ISO Joe, they had Jerome Williams, they had Paul Pierce. Like that team was way older. And then the Lakers, the team he won a championship with, they obviously had LeBron, Anthony Davis, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, like a bunch of veterans. This Mavericks team, is led by a 21-year-old or 22-year-old Luka Doncic. They have like second-year players, Josh Green, Tyrell Terry on their roster. Jalen Brunson's only 24 years old. Kristaps is only 25, although I don't know if he's going to be there much longer. Like the team, I don't know. Like the Bucks experiment, I think failed because he just could not, relate to the young team that they had. And I feel like we might see, a little bit of repetition here, but we'll see.
That's a solid point. But at the same time, I also feel like this, depending on who they get in the offseason, this is probably the best team that he has coached. I mean, it's close. You could argue maybe like the Nets team when they had Paul Pierce and Jason Kidd, but I would argue that this is probably the best team that he has to coach. So that might, make things more pressurized for him, or we could see, how far he can take this team in the playoffs. They hadn't gone past the first round, I don't think so. If he can push them past the second round, I think it's a dub ultimately. But I guess we can move on to our next topic, which is related. And as previously mentioned, 19-year head coaching vet Rick Carlisle will be transitioning from head coaching job of the Dallas Mavericks to his new team, the Indiana Pacers. Carlisle had won Coach of the Year in his first season, which was 01-02, which was, a while ago. And that was with the Pistons. He had also previously been a coach for the championship Mavericks when they had Dirk. And he was with the Pacers for a while, actually, also. So, same question, I guess. How do you expect this decision to impact the Pacers in the following years when they, recently had some disappointing outcomes in the playoffs?
What do you got, Jorie?
Well, I think this is one of the best coaching hirings, I think, of probably this entire off season. I mean, Rick Carlisle has an extensive history of just taking like mediocre or average teams and like kind of raising their potential and things like that. But this Indiana team is just not bad. Like they just severely underachieved this past year. They have Sabonis, who's an all-star, Malcolm Brogdon, one of the more underrated players in the NBA. Karis LeVert, Toby, your guy, he's a stud. Miles Turner. I mean, TJ Warren, who didn't even play last year. I think he played 4 games last season or this past season. Like, they have a bunch of legit players on this team. And coming into next season, I think that's what they need is a coach, because Nate Bjorkgren, I think they just didn't respect him this past year. Like, I feel like that's really what it came down to. They just didn't really listen to him. But I think Rick Carlisle is going to come in there, kind of be a hard ass probably, but they're going to win a lot of games. I can see that happening. I think the Pacers could potentially be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference and really get back to relevance now with him at the helm.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jorie. The Pacers, they have a solid roster as it is, and you're right. I think I saw a report about TJ Warren. He was not a big fan of Nate Bjorkgren at all. I'm pretty sure he didn't fake the injury, but he kind of prolonged it so that he didn't have to play under the coach. And I think, Carlisle's an all-time great coach. So I think with this roster, with this coach, I think the Pacers will be a playoff lock. They made the play-in with the coach they didn't respect. So with an all-time great coach, no reason they shouldn't make the playoffs. And the thing that excites me the most is I'm not saying that Sabonis is the next Dirk Nowitzki, but they have similar play styles to a degree. I think since obviously Dirk and Carlisle won a ring together, I think Carlisle will elevate Sabonis better than any coach can.
That's a solid point, and that was actually something that I was going to bring up also, was the fact that he already has some experience, some success with Dirk. Well, I shouldn't say some, I should say a lot, but hopefully he can, take some of the things he learned from Dirk, maybe even from Luka, apply that to Sabonis and some of the other players on the Pacers. But I think that they're going to be better. The Pacers are going to be better, but I still don't see them getting super deep. They might make the conference finals with some good roster moves this summer, but they're missing, in my opinion, they're just missing that one player, that one superstar player that can, if he was on this team, I don't know who that right person is, but I could see them, maybe even making a finals appearance. But that could be in 5 years. That could be in 10 years. So we really don't know. But I mean, yeah, I think the Pacers are going to be a lot better this year. And I think I was pretty disappointed in them too. Like, I had mentioned that I thought the Hornets were going to be a better team, which it was close. I can't remember who was, better than the other one. But honestly, I expected a little more out of the Pacers. And I know they had some injuries and made some roster moves, but hopefully, they'll have a little more chemistry this year and they'll mesh well with Rick Carlisle.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a team that gets off to a hot start next year. A team that, has had a lot of rest this offseason because they missed the playoffs. They want to play for a new head coach. They're finally going to have their team healthy. Like, they could be a team that starts the season off like, I don't know, like 15-5 or something, top of the Eastern Conference, and everyone's talking about, are the Pacers legit? Are they contenders? Like that. I think that's definitely a possibility.
True, because I never thought the Hawks were going to be as good as they were when they made that coaching change. But it just goes to show you how important coaching is, and how far it can take a team that you might not expect to go as far. So I guess we'll see next season how well the Pacers are doing. But we'll continue on to this year's playoffs, which has been pretty action-packed. And as we continue to go deeper into the playoffs, we start to get a better idea of who we'll be seeing in the NBA Finals, and what teams need to continue to improve on to reach that milestone, maybe next year or the year after. But last night we saw the Phoenix Suns take a commanding 3-1 lead on the LA Clippers. Heading back to Phoenix for Game 5 with Kawhi Leonard highly unlikely to return to play. Do the Clippers stand a chance to win the series? Will we be seeing a potential comeback for this Clippers team, or are the Suns your new Western Conference champions?
I believe the Suns are heading to the finals. I think the Clippers can turn it around and take it to 6, possibly 7, maybe take it to a Game 7, because Ty Lue does know a little something about being down 3-1. But I highly doubt if it goes 7 games, the Clippers win it all. I think no matter what, goes 7, doesn't matter. I think the Suns win the series.
I think, I don't think it's going to go 6 games. I don't think it's going to go 7 games. I think Phoenix is just going to win Game 5, move on to the NBA Finals. I mean, everyone talks about Tyronn Lue as being, the king of adjustments. The past 2 series, he went down 0-2, then made some changes, then came back in both series. But Phoenix is just a different team. They are so hard to just do basically anything against, and obviously it doesn't help against. It doesn't help without or not having Kawhi Leonard out there, but it's different from the Jazz series, even where you can go small and try and play Rudy Gobert off the floor or make him ineffective. That's not happening against DeAndre Ayton. It's just not happening. And he's been insane this entire playoffs. I saw a stat on Twitter. So DeAndre Ayton, he's shooting 50% from the field in each of his 14 playoff games. Again, his first postseason ever. The only other player to have done that in 14 consecutive games in the playoffs was Shaquille O'Neal in 2006. So I feel like that kind of displays how much how dominant he's been, at least offensively. It certainly helps having a player like Chris Paul, setting you up, and Devin Booker relieving a lot of pressure offensively, but he's still making such a tremendous impact. I feel like the Suns team, whoever comes out of the East, whether it's Atlanta or Milwaukee, it's not going to be an easy series. And honestly, Phoenix might even be the favorite to win it all at this point, just because of how dominant they've been.
Really?
I agree with Jorie. Speaking of Paul George making it easier for DeAndre Ayton even said, I'm pretty sure it was the post-game interview, he said Chris Paul is the greatest thing that's ever happened to him in his whole career. He said if it wasn't for him playing with Chris Paul, he probably wouldn't have made this leap. I mean, he didn't say that, but he was basically, he was alluding to it. But on the other side, I think this series could have been looking a lot different if Paul George wasn't the hardest choker of all time. He missed 2 free throws in the clutch, not in one game, but 2 of the different games. You can't do that because they could have won either one of those games. It came down to missing both free throws, not even just one, both free throws.
Well, I half agree with you guys and half don't. I do think that the Suns are going to make the finals. I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers took Game 5 tonight in Phoenix, but I feel like they've been pretty inconsistent at home in LA, so it's not so much of an advantage. So I think the Suns will either win Game 5, or if they don't, they'll win Game 6. But as far as them being the favorites to win the finals, that's where I will disagree with you guys, and we'll get into the Bucks-Hawks series later. But I don't know if they're going to have enough, like, what it takes to win the finals. But if Kawhi Leonard was playing, it would be a completely different story. Obviously, he's out, and he doesn't look like he's going to return just based off what I've seen, like, at the games. He's not even sitting with the team currently. So I think that his season is over. I don't think that Paul George, yeah, he may have choked a little bit, but he's been playing as hard as he can. We got to remember that Kawhi, when he was playing, was probably top 2 playoff, performance players that we've seen this year. So,
before we move on, can we talk about how Kawhi Leonard, I know he can't control it even in the slightest, but that guy is always injured in the playoffs. And it's not even like round 1 injury. It's like conference finals or finals injury almost every time. Like, this guy, like, you can't even do anything about it, but he's always injured in the playoffs. It's deep in the playoffs too.
Well, I mean, he's playing like pretty much the whole entire game, very physically, like one of the most physical or small forwards in the game. He's given 100% on defense. I don't know. He's just he's not like, he's athletic, but he's not the most athletic kind of guy. So he's probably has to push his body a little more to get to, like, dunk on people or make finishes or something like that. But you might be right about that. When he does play, he's probably one of the best players in the playoffs. But injuries, they'll get you. They're the worst. So
I did see that he was displeased or upset with the medical staff within the organization. So I mean, the Lakers already changed their, like, head trainer. I think they fired their head trainer because of all the injuries they dealt with this past year. I mean, that's such an important and underrated aspect of running a team, like having a capable and, intelligent medical staff so that your players can actually play. So important. So
didn't he have problems
in that department?
Didn't he also have problems in San Antonio with their medical staff?
Yep, same thing.
I believe so. Mm. And then he played through an injury in Toronto as well, I believe, during his finals run. So yeah, a common theme in his career, I guess.
I mean, I'm sure if he could play, he would be playing, but sometimes you can't criticize a player for. I feel like you can't really criticize them for being injured unless it's like an AD sort of situation where they like to fake a lot. That's a whole different conversation for another day, though. I'm not going to bring that up.
I will say this, though, about the Suns really quickly before we move on to Bucks-Hawks. A lot of people criticize the Lakers for having an easy road to the finals last year in the bubble. I mean, not to take anything away from the Suns, but they got to play the Lakers in round 1 with home court advantage in a series essentially without Anthony Davis and LeBron at like 80%. Then in round 2, they got the Nuggets without Jamal Murray and Will Barton pretty much the entire series. And then now they get to play the Clippers without Kawhi. So, like, again, this happens every year where a team just gets lucky and they face teams. But like, it's kind of crazy that all three of their series, they're basically playing teams without their best players. And whoever comes out of the East, whether it's the Bucks or the Hawks, it's probably going to be the toughest team they faced. Like, because they're going to just be fully healthy, and that alone is probably just going to make it harder than anything they've seen so far. So maybe I was wrong to say that they're the favorites, but the way that they're playing is still pretty crazy.
No, I agree with those points. And sometimes you just need a little luck. Like, I'm pretty sure every NBA champion had some sort of luck or lucky scenario happen in their run, but it's just part of the game. I feel like sometimes you're gonna get lucky. I feel like the Bucks got lucky, but it's whatever. So we can move on to that series. So we had seen Trae Young absolutely demolish them in game one with a stat line of 48 points, 11 assists, and 7 rebounds. However, game two was completely different story, where we saw Milwaukee completely own the game from start to finish, ending with a 125-91 victory at home for the Bucks. So with the series tied 1 apiece heading to Atlanta, the Hawks will be looking to take advantage of being the home team, while the Bucks will be looking to steal their game back. With all this into consideration, how do you see the rest of the series playing out? Will Milwaukee shut down Ice Trae in a hostile environment, or will the Hawks be too much for Giannis to handle?
Well, we know two things about these two teams, or at least I know two things about these teams. I know Trae Young can will the Hawks to a win, even in a hostile environment. But I also know that the Bucks play very well when they have the momentum, in a series. So I think after a blowout in game two, I think the Bucks will carry it on and win game three. But the Hawks will do anything. The Hawks will come out with a vengeance and do anything they can to win at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's imperative basically for the Bucks to win one of these games, because I think if they do go down 3-1, if they do drop the next two games, then they're probably going to lose the series. So they have to win at least one of these games in Atlanta and get back home court advantage essentially. But Trae Young, man, what the hell?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really. I mean, Justin, you kind of predicted this though. You said that he could be one of those breakout players in the playoffs, and that's. I mean, what 48, 11, and 7 in game one? That's like, that doesn't even make sense. But I don't know. I've been riding with the Bucks all season long. I think I'm gonna keep them. I'm gonna continue to ride with them. Fear the deer. I think they're gonna get this series dub. We're gonna see a Suns Bucks NBA Finals.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think if the Hawks can win game three and stop the Bucks momentum, I think the Hawks have a great chance at winning at game four at home and putting themselves up 3-1 heading into Milwaukee. And like I said, Trae Young can win in a hostile environment. So it wouldn't even surprise me if they came out and said, you know what, we're going to win game 5 too.
I would be surprised. I think the Bucks are winning in 5. I don't see the Hawks winning another game. If they do, it's going to be one of these home games, and it's going to go 6 max. But I feel like what we've seen from the Bucks so far this season, or this postseason. So if you remember back to the Heat series, that game one, I believe they won by like 1 or 2 points, and it was a close game, and it might have gone to overtime also. But after that, they were able to pretty much take care of business, like no problem, like shut them down for games 2, 3, and 4. And then as they moved on to the Nets series, it looks like they were going to get blown out. Games 1 and 2 were, game 1 was a little competitive. Game 2 was a complete blowout. And I feel like they're the kind of team where they need to see their opponent, try to kind of figure them out themselves rather than just look at film the whole time and they're not going to overreact if they lose a game 1 or a game 2. So I think that the Bucks have figured out the Hawks. Like you said, Trae Young can carry this team to another win. But yeah, I expect the Bucks to win the series, and I guess that moves me on to my next point, which is that I can see the Bucks beating the Suns and winning the whole NBA Finals, which is crazy because I'd been so, I guess I had criticized these teams so much this year, but I mean, hey, they're the best teams, so there's nothing you could do.
Yeah, I mean, me and you both, Toby. We didn't. I know I did not believe in the Bucks at all. I've been saying it all season. Oh, same old Bucks, same old Bucks. But this has been the best team that Giannis has had since he's been drafted, basically. So yeah, I don't if he can't get it done. If the Bucks can't get it done this year, I don't know if they'll ever get it done.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with that statement. I think this is their year. I mean, the Hawks are playing with house money at this point. I think they overachieved. I don't even think people expected them to win a series. I don't think, going into that Knicks series in round 1, a lot of people were taking the Knicks. And then against the Sixers, I don't think anyone picked them against the Sixers. But they're here and they're still standing. But I think the Bucks, they've been through it the past 2 seasons. I mean, if you think about it, like the Bucks lost to the Raptors in 2019, who went on to win the championship, and then they lost to the Heat the next year, who went to the NBA Finals. So it's not like they're losing to like crappy teams in the playoffs. They're generally losing to the best team in their conference. I feel like of those, last couple of postseasons, this Hawks team, in order to move on, I don't know if they're better than either of those teams, those Raptors or those Heat teams. So I think the Bucks can certainly take care of business, move on to NBA Finals, and then that Suns-Bucks series, which is what I expect to happen. I don't know.
That's going to be a good series.
I'll have to evaluate it as we get there. I have to look more deeper into it, but it's going to be fun.
I feel like that series is going to be super like low scoring. Like it's going to be games in like the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, we saw an 84-80 victory from the Suns against the Clippers in Game 4, which was like the lowest scoring game I've seen probably all year. But
yeah, and the Bucks were able to hold the Nets to like 80 multiple 80-point games. I just think the Bucks, they're just so solid like defensively, and I think once they get a good game plan, which I feel like they have now against the Hawks, then they're just pretty much just got to focus on, getting timely shots, especially in the fourth quarter, and they're going to be good. But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? This Hawks could just somehow win this series, and if the Hawks do win the series, I'm going to put my money on them against the Suns. I think they can beat the Suns.
Trae Young winning a ring in his first playoffs would be historic.
That would be legendary. I feel like that would, allow for comparisons with Steph Curry. But I could be wrong.
No, I might be right on board with you, Toby.
Who knows? I don't know. I don't know if Steph Curry's ever performed this well in the playoffs, but I digress. Anyways, if that's all that we got for these playoffs, then we can move on to our next topic. So this past week was the official NBA lottery drawings, deciding which team will get which picks for the first 14 NBA lottery picks in this upcoming draft. And with the randomized selection based off of regular season records, the Detroit Pistons were fortunate enough to get the number 1 pick, followed by the Houston Rockets with the number 2 pick, and the Cleveland Cavaliers with the number 3 pick. So my question to you is, which upcoming future NBA player would you think makes the most sense for each of these teams to pick based off of their roster makeup and their pick projections And we could start off with the number 1 pick, which is the Detroit Pistons. I feel like we all might have a similar answer for this.
You can go, Jorie.
All right. Well, the last time, I'll say this first. The last time the Pistons had a pick this high, they royal. It was probably one of the worst decisions in NBA history. Taking Darko Milicic over Carmelo, over Chris Bosh, over Dwayne Wade. Like, so Detroit, if you mess this up, then you don't deserve to be a team anymore. That being said, I think Cade Cunningham has been the pretty much like presumptive number 1 pick all year long, and rightfully so. I mean, he literally, I was like, I think in the beginning of the year before early in the college basketball season, I was kind of like on the side of like Jalen Suggs being like better than Cade Cunningham. And then as the season went on, it's just like, it's not even really close. Like, he literally can do everything. And like, I don't even like you generally prospects have like holes in their game. He doesn't do anything poorly. It's really crazy. And he's like 6'8", 230 pounds. You can just watch him. Like he doesn't do anything wrong really. And he might not.
Cunningham is 6'8".
Yeah, he's 6'8".
I did not know that.
That's another reason why I think he's just so far ahead of everyone else in this draft class, because he's basically like, I mean, he's literally like the size of like Luka Doncic. Can dribble, pass, shoot. He's probably already a better defender than Luka is. Like, he does everything. I don't think he's like an elite athlete. I think that's probably the one knock on him, is that he's not like a superb like Zion, LeBron athlete, but like his IQ is kind of like LaMelo almost, like in that sense. Like he's just so much. He's like cerebral basketball player, and if they don't pick him, then this would just be the dumbest thing ever. Like there's literally nothing else you could say. Like if he doesn't go number 1, unless they trade the pick, like he should definitely. You can't not take this guy.
You know, that actually helps me out. You've transitioned me into a perfect point, Jorie, because it would not surprise me if the Pistons were to trade down a pick to pair Jeremy Grant and Evan Mobley, because the Pistons do already have Killian Hayes. So I think with Cade and him, that would put them, in a weird spot. They'd probably be able to figure it out. Just put one of them at the 2, probably Cade more likely, but it would not surprise me if I saw them trade down a pick for Evan Mobley.
That's an interesting take. But I feel like, I mean, the obvious choice is Cade Cunningham. And I slightly disagree with you, where I feel like he could work well with Killian Hayes just based off of their playing styles, where I would honestly put probably Hayes at the 2. I feel like he might be a better shooter. And his game more resembles like a D'Angelo Russell, where he's like smoother, maybe not as aggressive when going to the rim. But yeah, Cade Cunningham, we saw him obviously in March Madness. I think, yeah, he's going to be the best player out of this draft. And like Jorie, like you said, if the Pistons somehow don't draft this guy, then they're just going to have to delete the roster. Like,
and I like the Pistons, like their team, even though they do have the number 1 pick, they have like a good team. They did really, really well in their draft last year, getting Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart, who both made all rookie teams. And then Killian Hayes, who was their top, their first draft selection in that draft, was like injured basically most of the season. So like we didn't even get to see like what he really is. So like that's like 3 young players that you could pair with Cade, on top of Jeremy Grant, who was like a most improved candidate. Like this team is not that far away from being like an 8-7 seed, in my opinion. And they're so young still. So
I agree.
Yep.
They play hard. They play pretty good defense, actually, and they play hard pretty much every night. So big things coming for the Pistons fans over there.
And don't forget, they still have a coach of the year in Dwayne Casey.
True. Dwayne Casey, great coach. But I guess we can transition to the next team, which is the Houston Rockets. Who do you guys think would make the most sense for them to draft? And, how do you think it'll impact their future?
If I was the GM, without a doubt, Evan Mobley. Pair him and Christian Wood, another most improved candidate, have a devastating front court. And to me, that's the only option, but I wanted to put in a second option that could be possible. Maybe they trade John Wall to the Pistons and take the number 1 pick and draft Cade just to keep the team a little bit younger. I don't see that happening. I don't see the Pistons. Even though I said it wouldn't surprise me if the Pistons traded down, I don't think they would. But that is a possible, maybe like a Luka and Trae Young type deal,
Maybe, you never know.
Interesting. I think assuming Cade Cunningham is off the board at number 2 and they don't trade down, I think Evan Mobley is probably the best option. Like you said, pair him with Christian Wood. And like everyone's kind of concerned about like, oh, you can't have like 2 center lineups. Basically, they're kind of basically centers. You can't have that in today's NBA, but like they're both like Christian Wood is like a stretch 4 essentially, and then Evan Mobley is like a 7-footer who moves like he's like 6'4". Like he's basically this year's like unicorn. There's always that unicorn prospect or unicorn player everyone talks about. That's Evan Mobley. So like I think he could fit next to another center in the lineup. I mean, he basically did when he played at USC, playing next to his brother. But another player that they could pick is Jalen Green, who has, I think he's probably the 3rd best player in this class, to be honest. I mean, he's literally probably one of the most gifted athletes in this entire draft class. Absolutely fearless. Like, you talk about like Ja Morant, how he's just like relentless attacking the rim. That's like Jalen Green essentially. I don't know. But I think going with Mobley at 2, because since the Rockets also have draft picks in the early 20s in the first round, they could go Mobley at 2 and then get another guard in that area and probably, essentially get the same thing. That's what they would be getting with like Jalen Green, although Jalen Green's ceiling is probably higher than whoever they would get there. I think Evan Mobley probably makes the most sense. Although it is a little concerning getting a guy with that, frame. We've seen, players like Kristaps, players like Jaren Jackson built like that and then have injury problems throughout their entire career. So that's also concerning, but I think he's so good that it shouldn't even matter.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. You guys pretty much said everything, but I don't think the Rockets should get another guard when they already have John Wall and KPJ. I mean, obviously they could get rid of one of those guys if they were to get a guard, but I think that the best choice would probably be Mobley, and pairing him next to Christian Wood. That's just like if those two can mesh well together, then I feel like that would be a really good big man duo.
Yeah, scary.
I think the Rockets, they're going to be solid, at least at like with scoring the ball next year. In terms of their defensive ability, I mean, we're going to have to find out. I don't know if getting Evan Mobley will turn them into a playoff team, but I think for the next at least 5 years, that'll be a solid pick. They're not going to regret trying to choose somebody else and like that player doesn't live up to their expectations. And I think it's just the best choice in terms of like the players that they already have. So I think Evan Mobley, if they don't get Evan Mobley, then I don't know what they're doing. But I mean, Jorie made a good point with Jalen Green. I do also think that he's going to be like one of the best scorers out of this draft. I'm not sure if the Rockets are the right fit for him, but who knows? They could, try to draft him. Maybe they will trade John Wall, and that would also be pretty scary too. Him and KPJ at the 1 and 2, just getting buckets. But I guess we can move on to the third team, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers. So they've already had a bunch of, lottery picks over the past 5 years or so. Well, who do you think they should draft at number 3? And how do you think this will impact their future?
The Cavs, the poor Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't even know. I don't know what they should do because they already have Sexland. They already have Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. They just drafted Isaac Okoro. And other than Evan Mobley, most of the other players projected to be, around the top 10 are all guards or wing players. For me, the only option would be someone like Jonathan Kuminga, who can play both the 3 and the 4 because he's a little bit bigger. I think he's like 6'8", right? He's around 6'8", 6'7", something like that. So, he could be that guy who could just go from wing to 4, whatever whatever you need from him. I don't like. Other than that, I don't really even know. They always get these lottery picks, and then they never get a good roster out of it. They always just mash players together into one roster.
I think this is probably bold, but I really am not sold on Jonathan Kuminga, like at all. I think he could be a bust, especially if he goes number 3. And like you said, like I don't know if Jalen Green makes sense here when you have Colin Sexton and Darius Garland already. So I think at this point you got to look at your options and you got to trade down. I think if you're a Cavs. I think they lucked out getting number 3, and everyone's like, oh, you should keep it because you weren't projected to have a top 3 pick in this year's draft. But, I mean, like you said, even if Evan Mobley was there at 3, they have Jared Allen. And again, Jalen Green doesn't necessarily fit there with like you said, they just got Isaac Okoro in that backcourt. So I think you trade down with a team who's desperate for a player that has a really high ceiling, like a team like Sacramento, potentially, a team that wants to win like now, and they have a star in De'Aaron Fox, and they need another superstar or at least a player who has superstar potential. And I think the player that the Cavs could look at is Duke's Jalen Johnson, who is basically like, I don't know really who I would compare him to, but he's like 6'9". He's a very explosive athlete. He has like pretty solid ball handling skills. He can like run the floor well. He's a really good rebounder. He's an underrated like passer. He kind of just does a little bit of everything. I wouldn't say he's like a great shooter, but I mean, I think you could just throw him in at the 4. And that lineup of Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Okoro, him, and Jared Allen would be flying up and down the floor every night. I mean, that team would be like, they would probably lead the team. They would probably lead the league in fast break points or something like that. Because, I mean, all that athleticism on one team would be nuts. But the reason why I think they could grab him is everyone thinks this guy has like a top 5 talent. And that's basically what has been said up until this past season. But everyone says he has quote unquote character issues. This seems to always happen with like some players. And a lot of teams are projecting he might slide on draft night. So I feel like the Cavs should trade back, get more assets, and then just take this guy because he has a lot of potential. He was a player who opted out of Duke's season in the middle of the year because he suffered a foot injury, and then Coach K benched him after that. And he's like, "Oh well, I'm the best player on the team. Why are you benching me?" I guess. And then he kind of just quit on the team. So he got a lot of heat for that. But I think if you put him in a good situation with good people, I mean, he's like a superstar, basically. And getting him at 9, I believe is what the Kings pick is, would be a steal.
You know, I didn't think about that for the Cavs just because of, you know, how bad of a position they're in, but that would be a pretty good trade in my opinion if you traded picks with the Kings, because if the Kings could pair De'Aaron Fox and Jalen Green together, that would be a dirty backcourt. That would be dirty.
And I guess to add on to that, I also did hear rumors that Marvin Bagley wants out. So that would probably be a good incentive for the Cavs if they wanted to trade down. But I disagree with Jorie's analysis. I think that Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a stud. Now, the thing about him, he could either be drafted top 3 or he could fall to like 15, I feel like, because the thing about him is it's all about potential. Like, he's already a great defender. He's 6'8". He can shoot. He has a smooth jumper. And he gets the one comparison I've constantly been hearing is Paul George. Now, he has to work on his playmaking and his, dribbling. But I think he can get to a level where he can be an all-star on a team. I think he can get to a level where he's an elite defender. He's super athletic. He's quick for 6'8". I think he weighs like 210 pounds. But with that Cavs team, like you said, Justin, I think that they have the 1 and 2 set with Sexton and Garland, regardless of if they want to get rid of Sexton or not, because that's very possible. And plus they already have a Okoro, they already have Jared Allen, like Jorie said. So I think putting him in that 3/4 spot would be a good fit for him. And being on a team like the Cavs, as long as, like they say, Sexton doesn't be a ball hog, I think that'll be a good team for him to work on his craft and sort of get better offensively to where he can be like eventually an all-star in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe a bust is too harsh a word, but I feel like he's probably everyone saw him as like top 3, behind Cade and Evan Mobley, really. And then it was always like, oh, is it Green or is it Kuminga? Like, I feel like Suggs is better than him. I feel like Jalen Green is better than him. Like, I don't know. I feel like if he goes top 3, people or teams might be disappointed in a few years.
I mean, we got to remember too, like, I'm pretty sure he's at this point 18, and he has been playing against pretty much almost NBA competition in the G League. Whereas I feel like that's tougher to have success against than maybe college players. I could be wrong. Maybe college is more athletic, whereas the G League is more, strength and skill oriented. But I don't know. I just think it's going to be a good translation into the NBA, even at a young age, and he'll be able to improve on the things that he maybe lacks, like his ball handling or playmaking or anything like that.
Really, the only thing I want to see in this draft is Jalen Suggs going to the Raptors. I think if that happens, that's all I want. I don't care about anything else.
Do either of you know the rest of the top 10 order?
I could pull it up really quick. It's on my phone, I'm pretty sure.
Because I know Magic. The Magic have 5 and 8. So the Magic might be looking nice in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's Orlando at 5, Oklahoma City at 6, Golden State at 7, Orlando again at 8, Sacramento at 9, and New Orleans at 10.
And the Raptors have 4.
The Raptors really lucked out.
Yeah.
If they don't, I really, really, really want them to get Jalen Suggs, because I think Kyle Lowry is going to be out of there soon, and he could just easily come in and play point guard for them, or just slide Fred VanVleet to point guard and play him at the 2. Have OG Anunoby and Pascal. Like, that team could just be a playoff team in his rookie year if he's there.
I don't know, but didn't they already just draft Malachi Flynn? You think he'll just?
Yeah, but Suggs is just better. He's just better.
Yeah.
It's not stuff. Malachi Flynn could be a 6th man, seventh man, whatever. Backup point guard, like a really reliable backup point guard. But Jalen Suggs is. You saw what he did for Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Guy's a stud.
Yeah, that was nuts.
He's like 6'4" too.
That one shot that he made in the was it the round of 8? It might have been
the half court shot.
Yeah, where it banked off.
I think that was against UCLA. I think that was the Final Four. I think
that was clutch. That was when I knew Jalen Suggs.
Yeah, he's a dog. He's a dog, man. I hope he goes to Toronto.
Yeah, that would be a good fit for him. Or Oklahoma City, maybe. I think that might be a good fit for him also.
Yeah, that would.
I think that they plan on trading Kemba. So, and
maybe we see Kemba in Toronto.
Yeah, we're probably going to see OKC get more draft picks after trading Kemba. It's just ridiculous, but
unnecessary.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much all that I had for this week. Any closing thoughts or anything you guys want to say?
Pretty sure Bucks Hawks either just started or is starting soon. So,
well, it's lit.
We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and by next week we should know that we should know the winners and who's going to be playing in the finals. But we're gonna have a good episode about that one, I'm sure.
Oh yes.
So yeah, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. This has been the Full Court Report episode 28, and we'll see you next Monday.
From myself, Jorie Mickens, and my 2 co-hosts, Justin Sadovi and Chris Tobias, thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Full Court Report NBA show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at FullCReport, on Instagram at the.fullcourt.report. Like and comment on this video and subscribe so you never miss a minute of action.